Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam. Good morning. Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam.
All right, there we go. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It is Wednesday, February 8th, 2023, and we are back home in the studio in the Java Cafe, and we have a special announcement. One of our guests isn't new to the Java Cafe, but as you know, last year we had the opportunity to do Java with Jimmy on the waterfront thanks to the sponsorship of the Boston Waterfront Coalition. And I found out last week that we are going to continue to be in partnership with the Boston Waterfront Coalition. And there are a lot of things that are coming up out of that partnership. One of those things are the Waterfront Coalition with their partners and other guests and people that move in equity around blue space. And you'll hear these terms all year and leading up to our wonderful signature event coming up in June. And we'll tell you more about that later. But we're going to talk about the importance of resilience and inclusivity. I believe I said that right. Down at the waterfront. And every month on the second Wednesday, they will be here. Different guests, people that move in that space, Waterfront Coalition members and partners will be here to speak with us about activities, naming some realities of why we need to be resilient around it and why there needs to be more intention around including BIPOC, Black and Brown specifically people. And this month specifically, launching our first Waterfront Wellness Wednesday. We're going to talk from a perspective of Black History Month and have a real conversation about our relationship to the water. For those of you that were at the ICA or watched it, Sheena Collier from Boston While Black named that there is a very interesting relationship between Black folks and the water. And so we're going to further that conversation by bringing in our wonderful guest this morning. I will go ahead and say ladies first, our Allison Bradigan from the Esplanade Association, and no strangers to the Java Cafe, our good brother Anthony Davis from the Coalition for Resilient and Inclusive Waterfront. And so we're going to say hi to both of them. Allison, say good morning, greet the folks. Tell us a little bit about what you do, and we'll reintroduce. Anthony's a veteran here, but for those that, we'll allow him to say good morning as well. But Allison, good morning to you.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much, Jimmy. Really glad to be here. I'm Allison Badridgen. I'm the Director of Projects and Planning at the Esplanade Association. We are a nonprofit that partners with the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation to program, enhance, and maintain the Charles River Esplanade. So we're this 64-acre park here behind me, you might recognize along the Charles River between the Museum of Science and the BU Bridge. So if you're ever downtown in Back Bay, that sort of area in town, we want you to come on down to the Esplanade and say hello to the Charles.
Absolutely. We're going to hear more from you in a few seconds. And our wonderful Latifa Zayad, who is not a stranger as well. I believe this is her second appearance with us. And so, Anthony, we'll just let Latifa go next. And, you're again, the vet, sir. You can almost go ahead and co-host. But Latifa, good morning. Greet the folks. Tell us the organization you're representing, and we'll come back around in a few minutes.
Good morning. Hi, Jimmy. Thank you for having us again today. Love this reunion. Also talking to Anthony, and nice to meet you, Allison. With the Neighborhood of Affordable Housing, NOAA for short, and I'm the Director of Community Building and Resilience, and are part of the Waterfront Coalition.
Glad to have you back, and our veteran brother, organizer, strategist, good brother, extraordinaire, Anthony Davis Jr. I gave you a slight introduction, but please introduce yourself in the context of what you do with Crew, and say good morning to the folks.
You're too kind, Jimmy. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and good morning, Latifah and Allison. Thank you all again for just taking the time to join the show this morning. Anthony Davis Jr. I wear a lot of hats, as James said, but today I'm here representing the Coalition for Resilient and Inclusive Waterfront, which is a coalition of now almost 60 organizations, mostly nonprofit organizations, across the city of Boston and into the greater Boston area, that's really focused on elevating the pressing issues facing Boston's harbors, islands, and rivers. And really, my role with the coalition is focused mostly on programming. I am our programming advisor, so we really build out programming to engage the community and serve as a convener of really local events and forums around the future and around resiliency and inclusion on our waterfront as well.
I'm going to go ahead and put the link in the comments and also show it on here. But Anthony, ladies, if you don't mind for a second, Anthony, if you can set some context, as someone that's been involved with the coalition, I believe it really started in May. There was a lot of work done, I believe, in maybe late 20, but May 21 was, I'm sorry, May of 22. My years are mixed up here. You tell us a little bit about the history, sir. You do it.
Yeah, no, you were spot on. So,
okay, all right.
The coalition really started about 18 months ago, around the mayoral election. We did some engagement around and programming around the election at that time, candidate forums, candidate questionnaires, and over the past 18 months, the coalition has really served as I would say part convener and also part amplifier of the work that our 60 partners are doing across the waterfront. Continuing to uplift the waterfront issues and policies, and then also center the waterfront as a resource that should be enjoyed by all residents within the city of Boston, whether you live on the waterfront, near the waterfront, or whether you live in the heart of the city. We really want to continue to convene conversations and that's what we've done over this past 18 months, is really convene conversations to really highlight the importance of getting folks down to the waterfront, and to also talk about the connection between the waterfront and public health. During the 18 months that the coalition has been kind of in existence, we hosted we conducted a survey of Boston residents. And one of the things that we found is that, over 60% of Boston residents feel as though there are some public health benefits of being on water. But less than 50% of Boston residents, normally or regularly actually go down and visit the waterfront. And so the coalition kind of serves in that gap of really figuring out how do we kind of close that gap in terms of folks who realize that there are benefits of being on the water, but actually are not getting that access.
Anthony, it's interesting because we do want to transition specifically into like this month's subject. And I announced it, but we haven't talked a whole lot about it, that these conversations are going to take place every month around equity, around resilience, and around activities and events that's going on at the waterfront. One of the intentions of the coalition is around BIPOC and specifically Black and brown people coming down and taking advantage of, and we've talked about this a lot. It's either 41 miles. What was the final number that we settled on the miles of Boston's waterfront?
I think we're at 46.
46. Okay. So there's an intentionality about Black and brown folks taking advantage of that. You talked about the public health benefit, and we're going to bring our ladies into the conversation. But can you just talk a little bit about why we were intentional this month for Black History Month in naming some of the things that and I put in the title of the flyer, our history and water. There's a real history of Black folks. Look, Latifah, eyebrow went up. Real history of Black folks in water. And so I'll start back with you. If you could just set a little context of why we're really naming this today. And then I'll bring Allison and Latifah in to really talk from their perspective of that history. But I'm going to talk a little bit about the history, but then we're going to talk about how we make history, because there's a lot of conversation going on right now about the waterfront, and we want to make sure that everybody's included. So Anthony, just you can actually bring Allison and Latifa in at this point after you just set a little context there.
Yeah, so I definitely defer to Latifa here when we talk about the connection and history of Black folks and water. But I think one thing that's really important is to note that, you know, the spaces along our waterfront historically and traditionally have not felt inclusive for a number of reasons. We can talk about transportation, we can talk about access, we can talk about affordability, we can talk about general comfortability. I know last year when we hosted our the Java with Jimmy episode at the ICA, it was almost a culture shock for some of the folks who normally walk along the waterfront, who normally that's a part of their daily routine is walking along that waterfront. But to see so many people of color there in that space at one time, having a conversation around the waterfront, you can tell that it was alarming for them. And so kind of going back to the poll that we conducted in 2021, one of the kind of, I would say, alarming findings from the poll was that white and Asian voters and residents in Boston tend to visit the waterfront a lot more than Black and brown residents in the city of Boston. And so for us, that is, I would say the coalition is in a very unique situation because we are one of the only waterfront organizations that is run by majority people of color. And so we put a premium and a priority on making sure that what we're finding from the polls and also what we see when we're on the waterfront, that we're addressing those issues and making sure that we're creating programming and also creating relationships like this one to make sure that this conversation is reaching new communities as well.
Absolutely. And we just want to name is where I'm very intentional when we introduce partnerships. And you heard Anthony say that there, and I know this for sure, there is at the leadership of the work of this, there is definitely a lot of Black and brown folks that are leading this work. And so we're here today and we're having a real conversation. You know how sometimes we, when initiatives and things start, some of us are like, I wonder. Take confidence in the fact there's some good folks behind this initiative. And so Latifa, Allison, thank you so much for your patience. Latifa, can you sort of set a little bit of the stage about our relationship with water? And then Allison is going to come in and really be real about the relationship, but maybe talk to where we jump in on a new opportunity to make history as a people. Latifa.
Yeah, so it's really exciting talking to you from East Boston because of course we're right on the water, so I'm daily reminded of our relationship with the water. And part of that goes as far back as the Phoenicians, right? Who were ancient boat folks of color who were mining these waters, coming back and forth between continents that we don't talk about a lot, but we come from seafarer experts, right? In this space. We talk about Columbus, who landed in the West Indies instead of here. The Moors of Spain was driving the boat. Why? Because they've been here before, right?
It's part of the route. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And then you look at the Native Americans that were here that own the water. They're called water people, the Wampanoag, the Massachusetts people. All of these folks were here on these grounds, not just taking resources, but balancing give and take of resources so that there was no overfishing. There wasn't these kind of things. It was a sacred part of our existence. And of course, we're made up of disproportionate amount of water, right? We have 75% water within us, and we have salt content within us. So we are part of that ocean, whether we acknowledge it or not, is in a continuum. So I call us the walking water people, whether we acknowledge it or not, because without water, we don't live, right? So I just want to acknowledge all of those different veins of water in our relationship. You cannot escape water. Right. And we saw that in Wakanda.
No, wait, because I was waiting to jump in on that.
Okay.
Listen, that was when you were talking. I'm thinking back to the boy with the man with the wings on his ankles. I don't remember the character's name.
Absolutely.
But that is, what you were saying and the visualization, art imitating life and blah, blah, blah. I mean, that is the correlation there. That was deep. All right, we could take the offer and give the benediction and just get ready to go home now, right there. Just go watch Wakanda and you'll get it. No, but Latifah, that historical context, I'll be very honest and transparent. When I asked you about that and bringing it up even to Allison before we went live, it was really about, as I said, what Sheena named, that even it's so interesting that with everything that we do, at some point it gets taken from us. So you gave the king and queenship of what we did and our leadership in water and being water people. And then the transatlantic slave issue happened. And our relationship, for some, Allison brought up earlier, is very interesting when it comes to water. And Sheena named something that some people may snicker at, but it may be real. There is some folks presume and say, oh, black folks don't swim and blah, blah, blah. A percentage of folks don't do that because of some of the belief that some have asserted that within our DNA, the boats in us coming over, we don't play with water. Some will say it's far-fetched, but let's talk a little bit about our history with water from that end. And Allison, if you could, Latifah gave the wonderful perspective of it. I've named the reality of how that changed. How do we get back, Allison, being real, but how do we get back to being what was portrayed in Wakanda? How do we take the vibranium of Boston? Ooh, I felt that. Of Boston's Waterfront Coalition and ascend. Sorry, I feel this thing.
Yes, and Latifah, I love that you called it a sacred relationship, and that is what we need to get back to. There's studies out there that being by the water, it lowers your blood pressure, it lowers your heart rate, it makes you feel relaxed, it makes you feel happy, and the people need that. And in order to get back to that, Anthony had mentioned it's conversations, it's programming, it's bringing the community back to these sacred spaces and treating them as such. We see people coming down to the park, and whether it's on the river, or it's on the harbor, on the waterfront, by the seaport, and it can feel a little commercial at times. It can feel like we have been separated from the ways that these waterways once were used. Boston, as we all know, is a city that has been filled over. It's been changed. It's been dredged up. The hands that changed it aren't here anymore, but now it's in our power for people to try to return to those spaces and make them sacred once more. And I think the programming and the community that we can build around these spaces is the best way to do that, by bringing people down to the water to gather, to dance, to eat together, to pray together, and love together. I think those are really beautiful ways that we can help bring that energy back to the waterfront, where it's been missing for a long time.
Absolutely. One of those spaces that you're showing there is the Esplanade. And where it's located, and we've talked about this, Anthony, in the past, as maybe even a policy thing that we can work on about intentionality around access. There isn't easy access to the Esplanade. For some, they'll say, yes, you get on the Orange Line, you may go to downtown, switch over, go to Park, and then get on, take the Green Line to, not Fenway. There, you can get there, but that is an area that a lot of us tend not to visit. You are the director of programming?
Projects.
Mm-hmm. And so what is the Esplanade doing specifically to be, more inclusive and get folks to be able to come and take it? Because I used to work at MGH in the Warren building, right next to the bridge that takes you over to the back end of the Esplanade to walk on. I think it's the Charles Riverway. It's beautiful, but everybody doesn't know that or know how to take advantage of it. So tell us, entice us to come down and take advantage of it. And Latifah and Anthony, we're going to circle back to that other part of the conversation.
Yeah, and Jimmy, you're right. It is hard to get to the Esplanade. And it, unfortunately, the way that the neighborhoods were laid out, the way that public transportation was laid out, it can feel purposeful that it was built that way. And The closest bus line, I think, is the one that drops you off between the Common and the Public Garden, and it's still almost a half-mile walk from there to the nearest footbridge. Storrow Drive as a highway is built in a way that separates people from the water. So there's history and there's infrastructure that prevents access for people. One of the things that the Esplanade Association is trying to do is to have more programming to bring more communities to the park. One of our programs that's been really popular these last few years is our Ground Beat concert series. You're right, Heidi, it is hard to get there. Thank you for your comment. And we're trying to build programs that invite communities to the park to have a reason to come, because otherwise it can feel like, oh, it's just another day down on the river. I don't work over there. I don't live over there. Why would I go over there? But by bringing some of Boston's best Black and brown artists to the Hat Shell, we would really love to try to get more people to have that reason to come to the Esplanade and to be at the Hat Shell and to enjoy that time together. We're also working with the state right now to build a visitors center in that West End part of the park near MGH, which is a lot more accessible by the T, a lot more accessible by Blue Bike, right by Charles Circle, the T station over there. So we're hopeful that in the next few years, there's really going to be another anchor point for people to come to. The visitor center will have the park's first year-round bathrooms, which is insane to even think about. But in terms of access, to not have year-round bathrooms, why would you
even in 37 below wind chill, they'll still be accessible? Oh, okay.
They'll still be accessible. Because right now, the bathrooms close from November to March. And it makes it so that if you live nearby and you go to the park for a run and you can go home, that's great. If you're out for a walk, that's great. If you're commuting, using the park as green commuting infrastructure, which we love to see, that's great. But if you're really trying to go visit, we need the park to support that through the infrastructure in the park. And so at Charles Bank Landing, the new visitor center we're working on with the state, we're really hoping that that will help bring people to a part of the park that's been neglected and that hasn't really had those programming opportunities or those infrastructure access opportunities.
I want to go back to one of the things you said and actually ask Latifah to sort of respond, and let's get into where we can take our power back and name the opportunities here. And so I really love how you just made it very plain that it can be perceived. And unfortunately, there may have been some intentionality around systems, structures. Boston is laid out in a very, we weren't the best urban planners in the beginning. Everybody west of us learned from our mistakes. But Latifah, there's been a lot of conversation around, from everything to, the white poles on the street, all the way up to most recently input around the Embrace Memorial. Can we just park for a minute? And Anthony will tell about some other opportunities, and they'll be coming up. When there are opportunities to... I'm done. Okay, so that just really threw me off. I'll make sure we send Embrace that little clip there. They are a supportive a partner. But that was hilarious. But the thing I want to park with for a second, Anthony, and you all can jump in here, is when opportunities are made. Right now, there's a lot of intentionality around including folks that typically haven't been included in the conversation to design, to give feedback as a parent, to give feedback as a resident of Dorchester that doesn't drive. Latifah, how important is it that we not only pay attention to the events and activities that the Waterfront Coalition and others are doing, but when there are opportunities to testify, to contribute to policy, to go to meetings around design in general, how important is it that we participate?
It's extremely important. And I don't say that as a sound clip. I say that as someone who's lived the realities of what happens when you do go to these places. So sometimes there's conversations, the griots of our community say, oh, don't go down to South Boston Waterfront because these things happen. And I looked up some of those things, and those things really did happen, right?
It's real. We're not saying this stuff isn't real.
It's real, right? But they happen few and far between, and they happen less as more of us come out because it becomes normalized, right? Not picking on Allison today, but raising the connections. I got some free tickets to the Esplanade this year for the first time in my time being here in Boston. And I went. And what I found as a barrier wasn't the walking and parking, because I be pushing the envelope on that. I used to work for ISD, so but anyway,
You are really acting up today. Go ahead.
was when I got there in the crowds and crowds of people, I had a VIP pass. And I remember walking up to the police that were, sending people places and blocking off spaces. And I said, which way is the VIP section? And he said, you're not going there. And I said, what? I didn't say anything. And then he took the time to look down at the band that I had that gave me access to that space. And I said, wow. Sometimes it's not just the invite, it's making sure these pieces are in place. People have gotten the training necessary to be open-minded to, the flow of different faces that might come into the high and some of the low tide spaces, right? So, I think I want to raise those things because they're real things.
They absolutely are. Yep. How do we, and that is absolutely real, but even more, as you said, as we come out more and normalize, but coming out more again, isn't just the activities and the events. It's when there are opportunities to participate in policy. And that is one of the goals of Crew, correct, Anthony? And so I wanted you, all of you can now, why should we make this a priority, not just to go have fun, which is real, not to impact our mental health and our physical health, but there's a policy point here that Crew and the partners are working, because their development and plans for Seaport, again, 2.0 or whatever, they're active right now. And so Anthony maybe can jump in. What are some of the things that Crew are working on that we can pay attention to as action to inform policy, along with the events and activities that we're going to talk about in June?
Yeah, I may be lagging a little bit, so sorry if I am, but okay. But so it's really important. I appreciate you raising this conversation, because I know one thing, a lot of time we can get caught up in just programming and events and forget the accountability piece. And one thing that I heard a few weeks ago from one of the folks who is a supporter of the coalition is that the coalition's superpower is really bringing people together who don't traditionally and haven't historically cared or been focused on waterfront issues with organizations that have. And in that marriage, I feel like there's such an opportunity for, programming events, of course, but there's also an opportunity for us to advance the conversation and to talk about policy. And so for the coalition, one of the, last year in 2022, both Allison and Latifah and James, you all participated in our Waterfront Summit, which we hosted at Roxbury Community College. And a lot of, in preparation for that event, a lot of things or questions that we heard was, why are you all hosting this event at Roxbury Community College? It's not on the waterfront. It's not along the waterfront. But for us, it made there was no other place to host it. I mean, it was really important to bring that conversation into the heart of the city, and to your point, to open up this conversation around the future, but also around policies that will make our waterfronts more inclusive and more resilient. I would say one other thing that the coalition did last year and that we hope to continue to do this year is to, bring elected officials into this conversation as well. At the summit, we had now State Senator Liz Miranda there, Sheriff Tompkins there, State Rep China Tyler there. We had representation from the city of Boston. And so we really want to continue those relationships, and it's great that those folks are coming out and speaking at events, but we also want to build in some accountability measures as well. And as they are joining these conversations and they're hearing information from our partners, they're hearing about the work that our partners are doing, and some of the policy proposals or some of the work that they would like to do with the city or with the state, that these elected officials and these stakeholders are also taking these conversations back to their halls, and that they're making sure to advance this conversation and to advance the policies as well.
Absolutely. I really wanted to raise that, Latifah or Allison. You both, actually, Allison, if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I love that we've taken the conversation here because it is beyond just programming and events. People need to look up who owns these spaces and get on their listserv so you actually hear about the public meetings, hear about those design meetings so that you can come and participate. The best projects are the ones that hear from the most people. And I'm biased, I'm a project manager my whole career, and we want to hear from more people. And it's not just about outreach through our programs and through our social media to get people to come to these public meetings, but for people to do a little bit of the legwork and see what's going on in their communities and make sure that they're plugged into that, and find out when those events are happening. It's all over the city. Like Latifah said, there's the Seaport 2.0. There's City of Boston events, DCR is hosting events.
There's a real thing. I was just being facetious when I kind of said Seaport 2.0. That's real. There's a real entity or initiative or movement.
There are public meetings still for the work going on all across the city, and that's really what we want people to get involved with, to see when those public meetings are happening, because that's the feedback that these agencies receive, and that's the feedback that goes directly into the next round of design. So for people to have their voices be heard, for their needs and requirements to be met for these community spaces, people just need to be plugged into those public processes because they're happening all over the city, and we want more people to participate.
I just wanted to chime in real quick because I'm wonderful. And again, I know the sister, and so typed word text may not be the tone, but Heidi from Dorchester is asking, the Davis system, let's get real. Not everyone has access to social media, especially older people. And so Ian, who's a part of our crew as well, our good brother, said that, good point, Heidi. We also put out opportunities in the newspaper and other print media forms to those that don't use social media. So Heidi, when I introduced Anthony Davis, he's on social media and whatnot, but he's old school. And they've had flyers and yeah, they do like out on the ground outreach too. And so that is something I believe all of us are intentional about. And Anthony, I'll ask in a minute, but I believe that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I don't know if there was some sort of senior focus. I know there were a couple of events in the community last year where I remember seeing pictures of seniors out. And so maybe we can talk about that toward the end. But Latifah, based on what Anthony said about the policy piece, how important is it that we participate in that and be intentional and ensure that there is full awareness across the spectrum?
Well, I hear about the media outreach, but really things happen through relationships,
Yeah.
right? And so, as a community development corporation, having built 700 units of housing throughout our tenure over the last 35 years, and in a community where it's a dense Latinx community, um, we talk to each other about stuff, right? And not only do we tell each other about stuff, we green light it and bring folks with us, right? And so I think there, in this social media time, there is such a tendency to kind of lean towards that because the easy press button, let folks know. And of course, it goes viral, and a lot of people do know, and it does start word of mouth conversations. It's not absent of that. But we really do have to get back to our old fashioned tree, calling for people and having those kind of assignments for many reasons, because the water also comes with its own liability, right? If we had a tsunami tomorrow, how quickly could we tell each other that that's happening? You know, these are the kind of things we really can't talk about without having that closeness niche across social isolation, right? And it just has so much. You talk about a mental health benefit, Allison. That has so much benefit for us just talking to each other, right? And being in real time and doing that. So that way, that elder who's not online can easily get that phone call routinely, monthly, and then this is added to it, and bring them out with you. I can't tell you how much I might post something on social media and I might not ever see a body out, maybe once every blue moon. But if I bring them with me 100% of the time, they came.
And they go,
And they'll come back again and they'll bring someone else. Right. So we have to create events where we're talking, being intentional about bringing people over, bus them over. I mean, you look at the Seaport, it's less than 3% African American people. That's worse than South Boston in 1968. Right? I mean, so you got to really look at like what's really happening and read it for what it is, right? And if people, I know we talk about programs versus policy,
Not
but if you,
versus.
well,
Let's be intentional about words. Programming and
and I think that and comes after. I think when you introduce people to a space, they then have ownership of that space and they warm up to it. If it's distant from them, if they don't perceive it as their issue, they don't do anything with it. And even if it's close to them, if they're not acclimated to it, they still don't use it. So you look at Hyde Park. I had a niece that lived out there for 15 or so years. She in her backyard had that riverway. Never got in a boat. Never gotten a boat. Why? You know, these stories that you alluded to, Jimmy, earlier have distanced us away from our heritage of water, right? And then you put it in the mix of our commercialized appetites. People are going to the supermarket, they're not fishing, right? And then when you see people who are coming from areas where they do fish, there's big signs up. If you're coming into downtown on that bridge, coming in from my side of town, coming from Everett, there are people out there, but there are big signs that says no fishing, right? So we don't even have a culture that brings people into the art or even welcomes them to fish. And those signs look like a poison sign, a big cross and a thing in the middle. It's not inviting. So we have to re-examine our relationships. And we see with what happened recently with the pandemic and food shortages, how much better would it have been if people had access to at least fishing, right?
absolutely. Even if it's a thing of you know, getting it and throwing it back or something like that, just the action of going out. I remember being taken, my grandfather, 1 or 2 times, being a little kid and going out being told not to play with the catfish because it was going to bite me. And so it is definitely important that we pay attention to all of this impact. And Latifah, I can see that folks outside your conference room there ready for you to go. Are we over time? Okay.
No.
I'm
Believe
just sure looking out for you. It's important that we take our stance in spaces. No, I'm just messing. I'm messing. Anthony, we're going to get ready to wrap up in a few minutes. And so Allison and Latifah, please make sure that if we haven't covered anything, that you get ready to share it toward the end there. But Anthony, I wanted to just share a little picture of something I saw you posted the other day. And tell us a little bit about what we can look forward to when we get ready to, hold on, where is it? Because you know this thing be, no, not that one. Where is it, Jesus? Window, photo. Let's see if this works. Nope, it didn't work. All right, we'll leave that alone. My computer's been acting up. I was trying to bring the flyer up, Anthony.
I figured.
Yes, and yes, go ahead, sir. I told you
no.
I set up this morning since the other night, so I got to recalibrate everything. And then we got the lag that Anthony said might come, and there it goes. Okay, there you go. You're good. You're good.
There we go.
Yes, sir.
So last, going back to programming, one of the coalition's kind of anchor programs last year was our Waterfront Wellness Week, which really was a 12-day kind of convening to really talk about all the things we've discussed today. The importance of bringing, Black and brown folks, diverse folks down to the waterfront, but also involving us in the conversation around the future of our waterfront. I know one thing that I want to go back to that was mentioned earlier is, during Waterfront Wellness Week last year, we had partners host over 50 events. Some of the events were geared towards the senior community, which I know you mentioned earlier, James. And also, we hosted events on weekdays during the day. After work, we had events on the weekends. It usually, this year will fall, and last year it fell during Juneteenth as well. And so I want to give a special shout out to Marcia Kim Jackson, who we know will be organizing the Juneteenth Joy in Hyde Park. And we will also be supporting again this year. And one of the folks in the chat shared a story about their father down at Castle Islands. And one of the anchor events for this year's Waterfront Wellness Week is actually that we're going to be hosting our Java with Jimmy live show again on the waterfront.
Oh, I didn't know if he was going to. Okay, hold on. Let me do the whole.
I didn't know if I could preview it, but we're going to go ahead and do it.
Okay, go ahead. Listen, we're going to do it. What do they say? Apologize rather than ask permission, apologize or something. So go ahead. If we're in trouble, we'll get in trouble.
We'll deal with it. Yeah. But we're going to host a live. No, I just think that there's power because this has come up a few times now about, South Boston and the traditional feeling. And as someone who's not from Boston, within my first month or two, that was one of the things that I heard. You stay away from South Boston. And even my fiance's father, he has a story, from I can't tell you, 60s, 70s, where he was jumped and beaten by, by a group of white guys in South Boston. And so this year for Waterfront Wellness Week, we are going to be hosting the live Java with Jimmy show in South Boston along that waterfront that we've been told that we shouldn't go to, that we should stay away from, that we have ancestors who have horror stories about being in. We're going to be bringing, BIPOC communities down to the waterfront in that space to take up space. And as our brother Conan Harris says, we belong everywhere.
Hold on. If you're going to do,
go ahead. You can do it.
We belong everywhere.
But that is real. And so the Waterfront Wellness Week is going to take place from June 17th to June 24th. Later this year, and we are just excited to be working again with our close to 60 partners to host events throughout that week. The events will be free, they will be accessible, and we will be bringing events both along. We will host events along the waterfront, but also be bringing conversations and events into the heart of the city as well for Waterfront Wellness Week.
All right, I'm just putting answering. Wendy, I pinned the coalition link in the comments there. If you're watching, I think you're watching on Facebook, so it should be there. The coalition link in the comments at the top of the comments. All right, Latifah, is there anything that we did not cover that you wanted to mention to us? Do you have anything? What is it that we should embrace that you're working on around the Waterfront Wellness Week or things you have coming up?
Well, I'm glad you asked. And one of the things is that, we intentionally did the Waterfront Wellness Week at Roxbury Community College, like he said last year. And I was on as a host. And as a result of that, I'm now the co-chair for RCC's homecoming and 50th year anniversary.
Yeah.
And so in that space and being that co-chair, I plan to intentionally bring water events into that homecoming and give us even another level of ownership in that water space. Talking to Pierce Park Sailing Center about aligning access for folks who are alum and folks who are participating in that event. Mm-hmm. And of course, I wanted to end with it being Black History Month.
Yes.
To note some of our highlight one of our Black inventors, Lewis Temple, who originally came from Richmond, Virginia, was originally a slave, but then became a blacksmith in New Bedford, of course, in that space of Frederick Douglass. And he ended up creating the toggle, which was the toggle iron, which was a new invention for harpooning. And the rumor is that his harpoon was so good that it almost killed all the right whales off, right? Because before that, it just slipped out and they had never did any innovation on the old harpoon. And it was modeled after the Wampanoag arrow.
You better teach here for this Black History Month and BIPOC. Listen,
embrace it.
I'm going to need Embrace to send me. No, I'm messing. You better do it, Latifah, and correlate it. Allison, what can we look forward to for Wellness Week, or what do you have coming up for the Esplanade?
Yeah, I want to note first, wellness doesn't need to stop in the winter time. The Esplanade currently has a winter fitness program. Come out to the park. We are on park benches. We are going up and down the pathways. Come do some push-ups and sit-ups with us in the cold. It's very invigorating, I will say.
Hold on, because I said a few minutes ago, sometimes we don't always participate with the water, but the other thing, when it's cold, we don't do the cold too much too. But go ahead.
It's fun to get bundled up. I think I'm a New Yorker. I'm not from here originally, but I feel like we take it as a point of pride to get bundled up and brave the cold.
Yes. Yep.
And look cute while doing it. Get your Embrace hat on. And
Brooklyn in the house. Brooklyn in the house.
Y'all are going to not get me in trouble.
You got a bunch of transplants on the show.
Anthony, you go ahead. Allison. I'm sorry, but let's behave, y'all.
But feel free to check out esplanade.org/fitness. It's not just coming down to the park, but we also have a worksheet that people can do at home. So have some fun, get out there this winter. And then later this spring, come back to the park. Our seasonal programming is going to start back up, and we will continue to have more public meetings as the season warms up for some of my projects. We have a public meeting coming up in partnership with DCR next week that DCR is hosting. If you just Google for Gronk Playground public meeting, our meeting for the playground project we're working on with former Patriots tight end Rob Gronkowski is coming up next week.
Gronk is coming?
Gronk, I think he might be there on the Zoom. He might be there. I can't make any promises. Okay. But the Gronk Nation Youth Foundation has very generously donated the funds for a brand new playground on the Esplanade near MGH. So we want people to come, be in the design meeting, give us your feedback so that we can incorporate it and make this the biggest and the best playground in Boston. And then later this year, we'll be having more public meetings on Charles Bank Landing. So we want people to get involved. We'll be reaching out to lots of different community partners, especially those environmental justice communities who we really want to have their requirements and their needs put into the design for this visitor center to make sure that we're really reaching people. So stay tuned, check out the Esplanade. We've got more coming. And thank you guys. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
I really appreciate all of you. And Anthony, now that I got it working, let's just show it again. Let's get it over here. I think, oh, Jesus. All right. No, here we, you know what? Here, let's do this.
Just embrace it. Just embrace it.
Latifah, you know what? I'm gonna you did 2 appearances, Lord. I don't know if we're gonna get the 3. And let me see if we can get this to work again. All right. Well, we got the full screen right there. Shoot, let's do that. Don't forget Wellness Week, June 17th through June 24th. Join the Coalition for a Resilient and Inclusive Waterfront this summer for the 2nd annual Waterfront Wellness Week. This week will include free events and fun activities for all ages along Boston's water, Boston Harbor Island and water. So keep that in mind as well. And as Anthony mentioned, a very soft mention that we will be doing Java with Jimmy somewhere in South Boston. More information will be coming very, very soon about that. But the other thing to remember is the 2nd Wednesday of every month, you can come into the Java Cafe, find out from the coalition what's going on. We'll hear from partners. We'll have presentations, and we'll hear about opportunities around policy. Yes, we're going to spend some time. If there's an opportunity to learn about policy or learn about Mariama White Hammond at the ICA show, Anthony talked about how you can design the waterfront in worst case scenarios. It absorbs a storm or a tsunami or something. After things clear and dry out, it goes back to a play place, you know, and so we need to be able to participate in that design and as residents of this city, black and brown residents as well. Latifah, you're smiling like you just want to drop and say something. Just
listen, I'm trying to get myself back on the 3rd show.
Oh, okay. So, all right.
So I want to invite all 3 of you for going winter sailing with Pierce Park Sailing Center using my board card. And, you know, I did last week in the middle of the cold, and I'm going to invite you guys out and bring your cameras with you.
I love that.
All right.
We're growing. We're embracing. Oh Jesus! Winter sailing winter sailing. All right, I can't even get. I can't. It's not.
We go out as long as it's not below 0.
So you go out if it's like 5 degrees.
Exactly.
You gotta enjoy the water.
That's what.
At all times.
Man. Conquer.
No, I'm messing. I'm really messing. I would. You heard when she said bring your cameras, and so that was like a low key challenge. Jimmy, you want to come out and go live? We'll figure it out. Nope. Heidi said nope. It needs to be at least 75.
Heidi.
I'm not messing with you all. This was Cappy said enjoy. Listen, thank you all so much. Don't forget Wednesday, that would be, because it's March, that would be Wednesday, March 8th. The coalition will be back with us next month for March, and it's Women's History Month. And I think we're going to have a different perspective around the waterfront, BIPOC folks, specifically Black and Brown, and women in the waterfront. So
and I want to remind people that the waterfront, like Allison had mentioned earlier, is good for your mental health, but there's lithium in that water that also is proven to help you get to that mental space of peace.
Yes. So how you going to drop a gem like that and then just leave it?
But next show, I will expound.
Did she just guarantee her spot for a third appearance? Latifah and Lithium. Latifah and Lithium. You all have a wonderful day. And we'll see you guys next month on March 8th at 9 a.m. here for Waterfront Wellness Wednesdays with the Boston Waterfront Coalition. Thank all of you for being here today.
Thanks, Jane.
Appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Everyone, please make sure I pinned in the comments the link to the Boston Waterfront Coalition. So please go there and get the information. And I think that's it for us today. Tomorrow we're back to Thankful Thursdays. Tomorrow is the 9th. Hold on, y'all. No guests tomorrow. So y'all just going to be stuck with me tomorrow. We'll do some catching up, talk about Miami, talk about the President's State of the Union, which was very interesting last night, but we'll save that for tomorrow. All right. We will see you guys tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Have a great day. If folks are reaching, just in general, if folks are reaching out for whatever for the next couple of weeks, I'm focusing. I'm currently in a conference. You know what? I need to mention this so I can clip it out and put it on his website because there's a contest. I'm currently part of the UOU Summit. With Dr. Eric Thomas, the hip hop preacher and world's most popular #1 motivational speaker, and have been attending a virtual conference with him the past 2 nights. Uncle Thaddeus hit me to his book. I was listening to it on Audible, got on his mailing list, and heard about this conference. And it has challenged me in a way that just really is empowering me around my around doing what I want to do, how I want to do it, and have no apologies for it. So, and he talks about building your own table. And so over these next couple of weeks, I really am getting ready to challenge myself to really get some infrastructure and some things together in my life, then the Java Cafe, and then the business. So if folks are reaching out and I'm not as responsive as I usually am, I got to stay focused. All right. So you guys have a wonderful We Need to Know Wednesday, and we will see you